Okay, Reish Tzadi Tes Halacha Aleph. This is talking about not eating and drinking before Havdala. Okay, says the Machaba. Also lechol shum davar afilu lishtes yain or shamashkin chutz mimayim. You're not allowed to eat or drink any liquid apart from water. Mishetechshach, from when it gets dark ad sheyavdil, until you made Havdala. Avol im hayu yoshev va'ichem b'yayim v'choshchlei. But if, and the Mishnah will explain, we're talking about a meal situation where a guy has washed and he's having shalashudas, and that was before Shkia, and then it continues beyond that, and even if it's after it gets dark, he doesn't have to stop. Even from drinking, he can continue. However, if he didn't wash, he's just eating, and then it gets dark, V'yesh oimrim dehani mili b'sofei chashecha, avol b'vatei chashecha, when it definitely gets dark, afilu ha'yoshev v'eichel, even if he had washed and he's in the middle of the meal, peres mapo, or mavdei, he should stop the meal, make havdala v'goy mesudasei, v'aminig pashut k'svara rishena, and our minig is like the svara rishena, that you can continue on, and that is the minig, that's what we do. If you started shalashudas, even though it's Motzei Shabbos now, and it's dark outside, you can carry on, there's no rush, and you can finish the shalashudas, bench, and then you make havdala. Okay, says the Mishnah Bura, Mishetechshach, va'afilu b'sofek chashecha. Even if it's sofek chashecha, va'ayin le'el b'siman reish samach aleph Mishnah Bura, denakdinan l'sofek chashecha tekef misheshoka achama. Now, what is sofek chashecha? Shkia. Shkia, that's already a sofek, whether it's nighttime. Linad lokas aneres v'chol melachim, regarding lighting candles and erev Shabbos and doing melacha. Umikal makom nearly, this is a very useful Mishnah Bura to know. When it comes to eating shalashudas, you are allowed to eat even if it's after shkia, or you've had shalashudas but you're just a bit hungry or thirsty. So people quote this, and this is where it comes from. He actually, I think he says the same thing in Hilchos Shalashudas. But you've got half an hour before Tzeis, if you haven't had Shalashudas yet, to eat something before then, if you're just hungry, up to half an hour before Tzeis. Just a couple of interesting things. First of all, number 2, the Chazon Ish wasn't happy with this. The Chazon Ish in footnote 2 says, Hayra she'ein lechel achar hashkia klal v'afilu lo lisod shlishis. Right, so therefore it's not unanimous. So the Chazon Ish says after Shkia, nothing doing, even if you haven't had shalashudas. But the Mishnah Berurah does say half an hour after Chatzos. Now this is very interesting. If you look at the end of the next footnote, footnote number 3, this is specifically talking about Europe. Right, the Mishnah Berurah was writing for Eastern Europe, and we're in Western Europe, but it's the same principle. But he quotes Rabbi Yashiv at the end of footnote number 3. Vagon Rabbi Yashiv Hayra. There's a long ben hashmoshes, and therefore in the summer you can have ben hashmoshes for well over an hour, and even in the short winter day we're talking about ben hashmoshes of 45 minutes, 50 minutes. And therefore this wouldn't necessarily apply in Eretz Yisrael. So this half an hour Mishnah Berurah ruling that you can eat up to half an hour before, again, if you haven't, no, we're not talking about where you've washed. We're talking about a situation. It's time you want to have a drink or you want to have something to eat, up to half an hour before Tzeis, that seemingly would apply not in Eretz Yisrael, where there's a very short Ben Hashmoshes. Okay, Kosav Magen Avram. We have 3 lines before we turn over. Kosav Magen Avram. That which the Mechaber says, Mishetechshach Ma'iri Kishlei Spal Arvis. We haven't daven Mariv. Avil Mispal Arvis. But once you've daven Mariv, Afilim Mispal Meboid Yom, the Yesh Ofen Shemutza, we've said previously, there are ways where you can daven Mariv before Motzei Shabbos. You're traveling, Dvar Mitzvah, whatever it is. Chola Olav Chovas Havdala. But once Motzei Shabbos kicks in, and you've daven Mariv, then you've got a Chi of Havdala. V'asa Lechal Ad Sheyavdala Lakais. So once you've stopped the Shalashudas, even if you haven't benched, but just to daven Mariv, then you've got to make Havdala, and you shouldn't continue eating. Yoshev Eichel. So the Mechaber said, if you're sitting and eating Meboid Yom, then you can continue. Even if you've started, even let's say you've washed before Shkia, and then by the time you start eating, it's after Shkia, that's okay. So long as you've started the Suda before Shkia, Miba'idiyim, and Dafka Bazesha Hischalecho Beheta, because there you started eating Beheta, Avalim Hischal Be'issa, but if you started Be'issa, you started too late, then Poisiku Mavdil, you got to stop. Ach Belav Hochitzarch Livset Mishum Kriyash Mashal Arvishi Deraisa, aside from the fact that you should stop for Kriyashma, which is Deraisa. If you started eating before half an hour before Tzeis, don't rely on the fact that the shamash is going to start knocking on the doors, calling everyone for shul. Unless you're rogel to go to shul, which Baruch Hashem we all do on Motzei Shabbos. So you don't need to stop. So this is going on where you've washed before Shkia, and therefore ein tzorech lahafsik. Va'afilu likriya shema v'tefillah ein tzorech lahafsik be'emsa sudosei. If you're in the middle of a long shalashudas which continues, beyond the zman for Motzei Shabbos, you do not have to stop for tefillah, for kriya shema. Kimin shehischot min ba'id yom. Because you started when it was still mutter. You don't have to be machmir to stop. Because if you're stopping, a little bit abruptly, it's as if you're sort of dismissing the king. You're too happy to get rid of Shabbos. The Mechilta says, you should also look protected on its exit. You're sort of delaying the departure of your beloved friend. If, however, you stop the Suda in order to daven Mariv, once you daven Mariv, then you shouldn't continue eating. Okay, but in contrast, if you were Yoshev v'Shosev v'Choshchalei, Hainu sheyoshev lishtes in Beidim v'Loi b'Sei Chasuda, you're just it's not part of Shalashudus, it's just that you're eating or drinking or whatever. V'Choshchalei, and then it gets dark, i.e. Shkia hits. V'Afilu imrak nase sofik chashecha tzorech lahafsik. Then you got to stop eating. The shtia lav do v'choshevu shetoil haschrosim b'Beidim. Because if it's not in the context of a meal, that's not good enough. Just by the way, very interesting footnote. We said, if you remember, I've always wondered about this, that, we said, he says in the Mechaber here that, so that means, late on Shabbos afternoon, you can drink water, even if it's late before, it's very close to Motzei Shabbos, within half an hour of Motzei Shabbos, you're allowed to drink water. We said previously not. So he says in footnote 12, remember, that's only dafka water from rivers. Because of so that's talking about the water from rivers. But to some water from the taps here, that would be okay. Okay, let's just finish off. Sifkot and Vav. The Yesh Omrim says that you've got to stop. The first opinion was that if you started midba'ijim, you started your meal midba'ijim, ein tzorech lahafsik. Afilu k'shenasa v'adech hashecha, v'ledezu tzorech lahafsik. That's the difference between the two shittas. Aval inin lachatchila, but ein nafkamina bein de'ezu l'dei kamaisa. L'dei kamaisa also lahaschel lechel afilu b'sofich hashecha. But even the first opinion would say that once it's shkir, you shouldn't wash beyond that. Okay, so just to summarize Sif Aleph, that once it's Sofik Hashecha, which is Shkia, you should not start eating. According to the Chazon Ish, that's absolutely clear. The Mishnah Berurah does say that if you haven't had Shalashudas, if you're hungry, you can eat up to half an hour before Tzeis HaKechavim. And beyond that, the only thing you can really have, and that's talking about a Suda. If you've started the Suda Beheta, then you can continue even beyond Motzei Shabbos. But if you did not have part of a meal, you were just eating cake or fruit or whatever, then your absolute cutoff is half an hour before Motzei Shabbos. Okay, see you.